Students, now we are going to see the perineum. The perineum will be discussed under the following headings: introduction of the perineum, boundaries of the perineum, subdivisions of the perineum, then anal triangle in detail. Before going to the anal triangle, we are going to see the arrangement of the layers in the urogenital triangle. The perineum is the lowest region of the trunk in the interval between the upper and medial aspect of the thighs. In other words, the perineum is the lowest portion of the pelvis between the pelvic diaphragm above and the pelvic outlet below. The perineum is traversed in males by the urethra and anal canal. In females, it is traversed by the urethra, vagina, and the anal canal. The perineum has superficial and deep boundaries. So if you take the superficial boundaries of the perineum corresponds to the surface feature of the perineum. In lithotomy position, the perineum is diamond shaped and is bounded anteriorly by the scrotum in males. In females, it is bounded anteriorly by the mons pubis. The superficial boundary is bounded by the buttocks. Laterally, it is bounded by the upper part of the medial side of the thigh. The deep boundaries of the perineum corresponds to the boundaries of the pelvic outlet. The perineum is bounded anteriorly by the inferior margin of the pubic symphysis. The inferior margin of the pubic symphysis is covered by a ligament called arcuate pubic ligament. This black line indicates the arcuate pubic ligament. The arcuate pubic ligament, it covers the inferior aspect of the pubic symphysis. That means it is attached to the upper margin of the pubic rami on either side. Posteriorly, the perineum is bounded by the tip of the coccyx. Anterolaterally, it is bounded by a conjoined ischiopubic ramus. Posterolaterally, it is bounded by a ligament called sacrotuberous ligament. The lateralmost boundary is the ischial tuberosity. The perineum is subdivided into two triangles by means of an imaginary line connecting the anterior ends of the ischial tuberosity of the both sides. The triangle is called anterior triangle or urogenital triangle or anterior perineum. Posteriorly, this triangle is called anal triangle or posterior triangle or posterior perineum. The anterior triangle in males is traversed by the urethra. The posterior triangle, that means the anal triangle, is traversed by the anal canal. In females, the anterior triangle, that means the urogenital triangle, is traversed by the urethra and the vagina. The posterior triangle, that means the anal triangle, is traversed by the anal canal in the midline. Although the anal triangle and the urogenital triangle, they lie in a pelvic outlet, but the direction of these two triangles differ. In this picture, you can able to appreciate the cut end of the pubic symphysis, the obturator foramen, the lesser sciatic foramen, and the greater sciatic foramen. The ligaments you know already, the sacrospinous ligament and the sacrotuberous ligament. Now, if you carefully observe, we have already described a horizontal line separating the two triangles. This horizontal line drawn across the anterior ends of the ischial tuberosity, separating the perineum into the anterior triangle and the posterior triangle, that is the urogenital triangle and the anal triangle. Now, if you take the direction of these two triangles, if you carefully observe the urogenital triangle, this urogenital triangle is directed downwards and backwards towards the imaginary horizontal line. The anal triangle is directed downwards and forwards towards the imaginary line. Now we are going to see the anal triangle in detail. Before seeing the anal triangle in detail, we will see the arrangement of the different layers of the urogenital triangle. This picture shows the diagrammatic representation of the different layers of the urogenital triangle. The urogenital triangle contains the following layers from below upwards. That means superficial to deep. The following layers are skin, the fatty layer of the superficial fascia, the membranous layer of the superficial fascia, otherwise called Colles fascia, then the perineal membrane, and lastly the superior fascia of the urogenital diaphragm. If you carefully observe this diagram, the three layers, the Colles fascia, the perineal membrane, and the superior fascia of the urogenital diaphragm, these three layers are attached to the conjoined ischiopubic rami on both sides. If we take this Colles fascia, it is attached to the inferior margin of the ischiopubic rami. The red line indicates the attachment of the Colles fascia. Now, if we take the perineal membrane, it is attached to the inner surface of the ischiopubic rami. The blue line indicates the attachment of the perineal membrane. Now, if we take the superior fascia of the urogenital diaphragm, it is attached to the upper margin of the ischiopubic rami. The pink line indicates the attachment of the superior fascia of the urogenital diaphragm. So, if we carefully observe these layers, there is a space between the Colles fascia and the perineal membrane. This space is called superficial perineal pouch. The superficial perineal pouch contains muscles, blood vessels, and the nerve fibers. Now, if you carefully observe, there is a space between the perineal membrane and the superior fascia of the urogenital diaphragm. This space is called a deep perineal pouch. It also contains the muscles, blood vessels, and the nerve fibers. Now, if you take the deep perineal pouch, the muscles in the deep perineal pouch, it lies below the pelvic diaphragm. So, the muscles in the deep perineal pouch along the fascia covering above and the fascia covering below collectively called urogenital diaphragm. Why it is called urogenital diaphragm means it separates the pelvic diaphragm above and the other structures present in the urogenital triangle below. So it is called urogenital triangle. The muscles and the covering fascia above and below is collectively called the urogenital diaphragm. This urogenital diaphragm, so it is called urogenital diaphragm. So the deep perineal pouch is covered by a fascia above. It is called superior fascia of the urogenital diaphragm. It is covered by a fascia below. It is called a perineal membrane. So the fascia, it covers the inferior aspect of the deep perineal pouch. So it may be called as the inferior fascia of the urogenital diaphragm. Now we are going to see the topic proper, the anal triangle in detail. The anal triangle will be discussed under the following headings: boundaries, cutaneous innervation, superficial and deep fascia, and the contents in detail. The anal triangle, posterior perineum or posterior triangle, is triangular in outline. It is bounded in front by the imaginary line connecting the anterior ends of the ischial tuberosity on both sides, posteriorly by the tip of the coccyx, on either side by the sacrotuberous ligaments. If we take the cutaneous innervation of the anal triangle, it is supplied by the inferior rectal nerve and the perineal branch of the fourth sacral nerve. The inferior rectal nerve is a branch from the pudendal nerve. This inferior rectal nerve supplies the skin around the anus and skin over the ischiorectal fossa. The perineal branch of the fourth sacral nerve supplies the skin posterior to the anus. The superficial fascia of the anal triangle is thick and contains large amount of fat, which extends deeply into the ischiorectal fossa and fills the entire aspect of the ischiorectal fossa. Now, the superficial fascia of the anal triangle is continuous with the superficial fascia of the adjoining area. That means it continuous with the superficial fascia of the urogenital triangle, thigh and buttocks. The deep fascia of the anal triangle is nothing but the fascia that lines the ischiorectal fossa or ischioanal fossa. In this diagram, you can be able to see the space between the anal canal and the obturator internus muscle. That space is called ischioanal fossa. So the fascia that lies in relation to the ischioanal fossa comprises the following: the inferior fascia of the pelvic diaphragm, that is the anal fascia, the obturator fascia, lunate fascia, and the perianal fascia. The inferior fascia of the pelvic diaphragm, otherwise called anal fascia, it is a thin fascia which covers the inferior surface of the pelvic diaphragm, which forms the medial wall of the ischioanal fossa. The slanting muscle in this diagram is the pelvic diaphragm, that means the levator ani muscle. So if you trace the inferior fascia of the pelvic diaphragm, medially it blends with the fascia over the external anal sphincter. If it is laterally, it becomes continuous with the obturator fascia. The obturator fascia is nothing but the parietal pelvic fascia that covers the inner aspect of the obturator internus muscle. In the first picture, you can able to appreciate the medial aspect or inner aspect of the obturator foramen. Now, this obturator foramen is internally covered by a muscle called obturator internus muscle. The inner aspect of this obturator internus muscle is covered by a fascia called obturator fascia. Along the middle of this obturator fascia, it is thickened, extending from the body of the pubis to the ischial spine. It is thickened to form the tendinous arch of the obturator fascia. This tendinous arch provides the attachment or origin to the pelvic diaphragm or the levator ani muscle. Now, if you take the upper part of this obturator internus muscle and its covering fascia lies in the lateral wall of the pelvis above the pelvic diaphragm. If you take the lower part of this obturator muscle and its covering fascia lies below the pelvic diaphragm, that it lies in the perineum, it forms the lateral wall of the ischiorectal fossa. In this slide also, we are going to see the obturator fascia once again. Now, if the obturator fascia is nothing but the parietal pelvic fascia that covers the obturator internus muscle, roughly along the middle of the obturator internus muscle, extending from the body of the pubis to the ischial spine, the fascia is thickened to form the tendinous arch of the obturator fascia, which provides origin to the levator ani muscle. The upper part of the obturator internus with its covering fascia that lies above the pelvic diaphragm, which forms the lateral wall of the pelvis. The lower part of the obturator internus muscle with its covering fascia forms the lateral wall of the ischioanal fossa. This lower portion lies in the perineum. The lunate fascia is nothing but the fascia which covers the medial and the lateral wall of the ischiorectal fossa. The lunate fascia, it starts from the anal pudendal canal and runs upwards, covers the obturator fascia, and just below the junction of the levator ani and the obturator internus muscle. In other words, just below the junction of the obturator fascia and the anal fascia, it arches medially, then it covers the anal fascia, blends with the fascia covering the deeper part of the external anal sphincter. The summit of the lunate fascia is called tegmentum. The perianal fascia, it is in the form of the septum that passes laterally from the lower end of the longitudinal coat of the anal canal at the level of the white line of the Hilton to the pudendal canal. The anal triangle of the perineum contains the following structures along the midline anterior to posterior: the perineal body, anal canal surrounded by the sphincter ani externus muscle, then anococcygeal raphe or ligament. On each side of the anal canal, the anal triangle contains the wedge-shaped space called ischiorectal or ischioanal fossa. The perineal body is a fibromuscular node, pyramidal in shape, situated in the midline at the junction of the urogenital triangle and the anal triangle. It is situated about 1.25 centimeter in front of the anal margin and close to the bulb of the penis in males and close to the posterior wall of the vestibule of the vagina in females. The apex, it is directed above. The apex of the perineal body is directed above and it receives the attachment of the rectovesical in male and rectovaginal septum in females. Below the apex, the body and the base of the perineal body receives the attachment of the 10 muscles in the males. The 10 muscles converge into the perineal body. Not only converge, it interlace and decussate with each other. These muscles are the bulbospongiosus, 2 in number, 1 on each side. Then the superficial transverse perineal muscles, 2 in number, 1 on each side. Then the levator ani muscle, 2 in number, 1 on each side. Then the deep transverse perineal muscles, 2 in number, 1 on each side. And one sphincter ani externus. Lastly, the one longitudinal muscle coat of the anal canal. So totally the 10 muscles gets interlaced and decussated at the perineal body. Apart from these 10 muscles already indicated in the males, in females, apart from these 10 muscles, the sphincter uretrovaginalis also attached, 2 in number, 1 on each side. The function of the perineum, it maintains the integrity of the pelvic diaphragm. This function is very, very important in females, so it is called in females as a gynecological perineum. It provides the support to the pelvic organs. The clinical importance of the perineal body. The perineal body may be damaged during difficult childbirth or when it may be cut inadvertently during episiotomy. The damage to the perineal body may result in prolapse of the uterus, bladder, and the rectum. So I have told previously the episiotomy in clinical importance of the perineal body. Now we'll see what is episiotomy and different types of episiotomy. Episiotomy is nothing but the incision given in the perineum to enlarge the vaginal orifice to facilitate the childbirth. There are 4 types of episiotomy. One is the median episiotomy. The second one is the mediolateral episiotomy. Then the lateral episiotomy, and the last one is the J-shaped episiotomy. First, we'll take up the median episiotomy. Here, the incision starts from the lower opening of the vagina. Then the incision runs posteriorly, passes through the perineal body in the midline for about 2.5 centimeters. If we take the median episiotomy, the advantages are it heals well, but it is easy to repair also. The main disadvantage is the median episiotomy may tear or extend into the anal canal. The mediolateral episiotomy, otherwise called oblique episiotomy. Here the incision starts from the lower opening of the vaginal canal in the midline. Then it proceeds downwards laterally at an angle of 45 degrees, either on the right side or the left side. This type is the most frequently used type. The advantages of the mediolateral episiotomy are it requires the least experience. Then it does not tear or extend into the anal canal. The disadvantages are it provides a greater blood loss compared to the medial episiotomy. It is difficult to repair compared to the medial episiotomy. Then it may not heal well compared to the medial episiotomy. So in the lateral episiotomy, the incision starts from the lower opening of the vagina about 1 centimeter lateral to the midline. Then the incision is directed downwards and laterally at an angle of 45 degrees towards the ischial tuberosity. Here the incision may injure the Bartholin's duct. Then the last type is the J-shaped episiotomy. Here the incision commences from the lower opening of the vagina in the midline. Then the incision is directed downwards along the midline up to about 1.5 centimeters. Then the incision is directed downwards and outwards towards the ischial tuberosity away from the anal sphincter. We are now discussing about the midline contents of the anal triangle. First, we have discussed the perineal body. Now, coming to the next structure, the anal canal. The anal canal is the last 4 centimeters of the gastrointestinal tract. The anal canal lies in the center of the anal triangle, below the pelvic diaphragm and between the right and left ischiorectal fossa. If we take the anal canal, the upper 3/4 of the anal canal is covered by the sphincter called internal anal sphincter, which ends at the level of the white line of the hilter. The entire length of the anal canal is covered by a sphincter called external anal sphincter, which lies outside the internal anal sphincter. The external anal sphincter is divided into 3 parts: the deep part, then the superficial part, and the superficial to the superficial part, subcutaneous part. The anal canal, the internal anal sphincter, and the external anal sphincter already we have discussed in detail. The anococcygeal ligament or raphe. It is nothing but the musculo-tendinous structure extending from the tip of the coccyx to the anorectal junction. If you take the upper surface of this ligament or raphe, it is covered by a lowest portion of the presacral fascia. Between the presacral fascia and the anococcygeal ligament lies the following muscles from above downwards. The first is the tendinous plate of the pubococcygeus. In this diagram, the blue line indicates the tendinous plate of the pubococcygeus. Then the muscular raphe of the iliococcygeus. In the diagram, the brown line indicates the muscular raphe of the iliococcygeus. Then lastly, the sphincter ani externus, it is indicated by the black line. The anococcygeal ligament, along with its presacral fascia, the muscles between these two ligament and the fascia are collectively called post-anal plate. The division of the anococcygeal ligament may result in the descent of the anal canal and the lowering of the posterior part of the anal triangle. The division of the anococcygeal ligament may not affect the process of defecation. We have already seen the 3 important midline structures in the anal triangle. Then coming to the ischioanal fossa. It is very, very important in the anal triangle, very, very important structure in the anal triangle. For your theory examination also, this topic is very, very important. This question was asked previously for about 6 to 7 times. Now coming to the ischioanal fossa, we are going to discuss the ischiorectal fossa or ischioanal fossa under the following headings: definition, shape, measurements, boundaries, then facial relations and subdivisions, then recesses, contents of the ischioanal fossa, lastly the clinical anatomy. So you have to carefully observe these 2 diagrams for the definition, shape, and the measurements of the ischiorectal fossa. Carefully observe these 2 diagrams. The space is the ischiorectal fossa. Now, if you take the definition of this ischiorectal fossa or ischioanal fossa, it is a fat-filled wedge-shaped space on each side of the anal canal below the pelvic diaphragm, present in the anal triangle of the perineum. Now, if you take the shape of this ischioanal fossa, it is wedge-shaped with the apex directed above and the base directed below. The measurements, the vertical measurement is about 5 centimeter. The anteroposterior measurement is also 5 centimeter, and the transverse measurement is about 2.5 centimeters. Coming to the boundaries of the ischiorectal fossa, the ischiorectal fossa has the following boundaries: the apex, base, anterior wall, posterior wall, medial wall, and the lateral wall. First, we will take up the lateral wall of this ischiorectal fossa. The lateral wall is vertical. It is formed by the obturator internus muscle with its overlying fascia called obturator fascia. Not the entire obturator internus muscles form the lateral wall of this ischiorectal fossa. The lower portion of the obturator internus muscle with its covering fascia only forms the lateral wall of the ischiorectal fossa. Not only this obturator internus, the medial surface of the ischial tuberosity below the attachment of the obturator fascia also forms the lateral wall. Coming to the medial wall of this ischiorectal fossa, it is not vertical, it slopes downwards and medially. It is formed by the levator ani muscle with the anal fascia in the upper part. The external anal sphincter with its covering fascia in the lower vertical part. Now, if we take the apex is directed upwards and laterally. The apex lies at the junction of the medial wall and the lateral wall. The apex is formed by a line where the obturator fascia meets the anal fascia. This line corresponds to the origin of the levator ani muscle from the tendinous arch of the obturator fascia. The base is directed downwards. It is formed by the skin and the superficial fascia of the anal triangle of the perineum. Coming to the anterior boundary of the ischioanal fossa, anteriorly it is bounded by the posterior border of the perineal membrane with the superficial transverse perineal muscle below and the deep transverse perineal muscle above. The posteriorly it is bounded by the sacrotuberous ligament covered by a lower fibers of the gluteus maximus. Coming to the next subheadings, the facial relations of the ischiorectal fossa. The fascia that lie in relation to the ischioanal fossa comprises the following four parts. That means that first is the inferior fascia of the pelvic diaphragm, otherwise called anal fascia, then the obturator fascia, then the lunate fascia and the perianal fascia. All these fascias we have already discussed in detail previously. Coming to the subdivisions of the ischiorectal fossa, the lunate fascia and the perianal fascia, observe these two fascia in this diagram. These two fascia divide the fossa into the three compartments: suprategmental space, ischioanal space, and perianal space. Observe this diagram carefully. You have to observe these two fascia, the lunate fascia and the perianal fascia, and the three spaces. First, we will take up the suprategmental space. This is a space between the apex of the ischioanal fossa and the tegmentum of the lunate fascia. It contains small amount of the loose fat. Then the ischioanal space or ischiorectal space. It is a space bounded above by the lunate fascia and below by the perianal fascia. This space is filled with the loosely arranged fat. The fat is present in the form of large loculi surrounded by an incomplete septa. So, any infection in this space is least painful because the swelling of this space causes the less tension. The last space is called perianal space. This is a space bounded above by the perianal fascia and below by the perianal skin. It is filled with the tightly arranged fat. Fat is present in this space in the form of small numerous loculi surrounded by a complete septa. So any infection, any collection in this space is very painful because of the maximum tension caused by the swelling in this area. Coming to the recesses of the ischioanal fossa, the recesses are the narrow extension of the fossa beyond its boundaries. There are three types of recesses, namely anterior recess, posterior recess, and the horseshoe recess. If you take the anterior recess, you carefully observe the diagram. The forward projecting arrow mark indicates the anterior recess. The anterior recess, it extends forwards above the deep perineal pouch along the pubic arch up to the posterior surface of the body of the pubis. Now carefully see the diagram. The red color arrow marks along the ischiopubic rami indicates the anterior recess. It is situated between the pelvic diaphragm above and the urogenital diaphragm below. This recess is closely related to the prostate in male and the vagina in female. Then posterior recess. The posterior recess in this diagram is marked by a backward arrow mark, the black color arrow mark. The posterior recess is the backward extension by the side of the coccyx between the sacrotuberous ligament and the sacrospinous ligament. The last one is the horseshoe recess. This recess connects the two ischioanal fossa behind the anal canal. It is marked by the red color arrow mark behind the anal canal. If you correctly use the anatomical term, the posterior recess is called posterolateral recess. The horseshoe recess is called posterior recess. Coming to the contents of the ischiorectal fossa, the first content is the ischiorectal pad of fat. The next one is the inferior rectal nerve and vessels. The inferior rectal nerve and vessels pass through the fossa from lateral to medial side. Observe the picture, the number 2. It indicated by the inferior rectal nerve and vessels are indicated by a number 2. They pass through the fossa from lateral to medial side. The artery is a branch from the internal pudendal artery, whereas the nerve is a branch from the pudendal nerve. The inferior rectal nerve supplies the external anal sphincter, skin around the anus, and the mucosa of the anal canal below the pectinate line. If we take the inferior rectal artery, it supplies the skin, muscles, and the mucous membrane of the anal region. This inferior rectal artery anastomoses with the middle rectal artery and the superior rectal artery. The next content is the posterior scrotal or posterior labial vessels and the nerves. The posterior scrotal or labial arteries, 2 in number, they are branches from the perineal artery, which in turn is a branch from the internal pudendal artery. The posterior scrotal or posterior labial nerves, they are 2 in number. They are branched from the perineal nerve, which is a branch from the pudendal nerve. These posterior scrotal or posterior labial vessels, they cross the anterolateral part of the ischiorectal fossa and enters the urogenital triangle. These posterior scrotal and the posterior labial vessels are indicated in the picture by means of the number 3. The fourth content of the ischiorectal fossa is the perineal branch of the fourth sacral nerve. This nerve enters the posterior angle of the fossa and runs over the levator ani muscle to reaches the external anal sphincter and supply the sphincters. In the picture, this perineal branch of the fourth sacral nerve is indicated by a number 4. Then the fifth content is the perforating cutaneous branches of the second sacral and the third sacral nerves. These nerves appear at the lower bar of the gluteus maximus in the posterior part of the fossa. And the last content is the pudendal canal with its contents. Now we will discuss the last content of the ischiorectal fossa, that is the pudendal canal in brief. The pudendal canal is otherwise called Alcock's canal. In the first diagram, the pudendal canal is indicated by a space between the two black lines. In the second diagram, if you carefully observe, the pudendal canal is situated in the lateral wall of the ischioanal fossa. The pudendal canal or Alcock's canal is defined as a facial canal situated in the lateral wall of the ischioanal fossa about 1 inch above the ischial tuberosity. Now carefully observe the first diagram. You can be able to appreciate the pudendal canal. It lies above the ischial tuberosity. The pudendal canal extends from the lesser sciatic foramen to the posterior limit of the deep perineal pouch. The deep perineal pouch in the first diagram is indicated by a space between the green lines. Then the pudendal canal is formed either by the splitting of the obturator fascia or by the separation between the lunate fascia and the obturator fascia, or by means of the splitting of the perianal fascia. If you observe the fascia of the pudendal canal, we are going to trace the fascia of the pudendal canal. The fascia of the pudendal canal above fuses with the lunate fascia. Below it fuses with the falciform process of the sacrotuberous ligament. Medially, it blends with the perianal fascia. Laterally, the fascia of the pudendal canal fuses with the obturator fascia. The contents of the pudendal canal are internal pudendal vessels and the pudendal nerve. Now we have seen the brief aspect of the pudendal canal. At the later stage, we will discuss in detail about the pudendal canal. Coming to the clinical aspects of the ischiorectal fossa, we will discuss about the ischiorectal abscess. The ischiorectal fossa is prone for infection because of its location and the poor blood supply of its main content, that is the ischiorectal fat. The causes of the ischiorectal abscesses: boils and abrasions of the perianal skin, the lesions within the anal canal, pelvic infection, rarely through blood. Any infection of this ischiorectal fossa often leads to the collection of the pus called ischiorectal abscess. The ischiorectal abscess in the ischiorectal space is less painful because this space contains the loosely arranged fat. So any collection in this space produces the less painful condition because it causes the less tension. The abscesses in the perianal space produces the tremendous pain because this space contains the tightly arranged fat in small loculi. So any collection in this space produces the maximum tension, which in turn results in the tremendous pain. The infection of the one ischiorectal fossa readily passes to the other through the horseshoe recess called horseshoe-shaped abscess. Since the ischiorectal fossa does not contain any important structure, we can fearlessly incise the fossa and drain the abscess. In the neglected cases, the abscess may burst into the anal canal to form the ischiorectal type of anorectal fistula, or the abscess may burst into the surface of the perineum to form the fistula in ano. Coming to the other clinical aspects, the fat present in the ischiorectal fossa allows the distension of the anal canal during defecation. The fat present in the ischiorectal fossa provides the cushion-like support to the rectum and the anal canal. The loss of this fat in debilitating diseases like diarrhea in children may result in the prolapse of the rectum. Sometimes, occasionally, a gap exists between the tendinous origin of the levator ani muscle and the obturator fascia. This gap is called hiatus of Schwab. If the gap is present, any pelvic organ may herniate into the ischiorectal fossa, resulting in the ischiorectal hernia. Thank you, students. In this video, we have seen the definition of the perineum, boundaries of the perineum, subdivisions, and everything about the anal triangle. In the next video, we will see all the features about the urogenital triangle.